officers to this meeting of Cabinet Equalities, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, is being held virtually. The meeting will be recorded and will be available on the council's website to view as soon as the meeting is over and as soon as possible. Everyone participating in the meeting is obviously accessing it from remote locations. So if I could just remind all members and officers, if you could turn your phones off or put them to silent mode, that would be really good. Members should have received the agenda electronically, and I will ask officers to come in and summarise the key points. For the recording, could all officers, when they come on to introduce a report, could they also introduce themselves? And in terms of other kind of housekeeping, could all members keep their selves on mute and their cameras off until I invite you to join the conversation. This will help minimize background noise and interference. I will turn to a member of Democratic Services who is also here to help with IT related issues. So should any members or officers have any, please could you reach out to the member of Democratic Services and they should then be able to assist you. Before I proceed to the agenda, I think it would be worth taking a moment to reflect on the fact that today is International Women's Day. And when I was reflecting on Bridgend as a local authority, I think it's really exciting to know that over the last 3 years, 3 years ago, since then we've doubled the cabinet, and also 50% or more than 50% of the senior management team has or is identifying as a woman, and I think that's quite an achievement. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you before we move on to the agenda. So there we go. Happy International Women's Day, and I'm sure there's lots of activities happening throughout Wales and the world. So yeah, I'll move on to the agenda. And item 1 is apologies for absence. As I mentioned earlier, Councillor Howell Williams will be joining us as soon as he can. He's just having a vet visit. I don't know if anyone else has anything. I can see that Councillor Venables has indicated.
Hi, yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to leave at 10:30 because I've been double booked. I've got another meeting. I'm not sure how long it's going to last, so I might be able to come back in if it's not a very long meeting. So I shall just leave this one at 10:30. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then Councillor Dendy.
Thank you. I'm actually the same time as Elaine. I have another meeting at 10:30, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave then.
Okay. And will you be coming back to join us, or is yours a bit long?
I'll try, but I don't know how long it's going to be lasting.
Okay, fine. Thank you. And Mike.
Thanks, Chair. I had apologies from Councillor Kay Rowlands.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And Gareth Howells.
Yes, Chair, have to leave for a short time at 10:30, but I do anticipate coming back in. I've got another meeting which I can't get out of, unfortunately, but I will hopefully get back in. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very popular time, and there's no way we'll get through the agenda by 10:30, but we'll try. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Could members indicate whether or not they have an interest to declare, and I'll come to you. Councillor Howells.
I just wanted some advice because it mentions in relation to the place names, Picton Street and Picton Place in my ward. Does that have would that have any sort of consequences of any form of declaration of interest? Because it specifically mentions it in the document. So I just appreciate some guidance on that, please, Chair.
That's a personal interest, Chair. Sorry, I've got a bit of trouble with my camera today. It's Mark Galvin, Senior Democratic Services Officer Committees.
Okay, so can I formally, all for the record, then declare a personal interest in relation to that item? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Gareth. Councillor Burnett?
Yeah, the same agenda item. I think I need to declare a prejudicial interest, though, as my parents live in Picton Gardens. So if any decision was to be made as to the result of the report, I would need to opt out of that.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Young?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm surprised that we've got to make a declaration of interest on this, because there isn't any sort of decision that needs to be made other than to wait for further results. However, as it's been ruled that we need to make a personal declaration, then I live in the ward that carries the name Picton, so I better make a personal declaration as well.
Okay, thanks.
Could I
Okay.
just, sorry, Chair, it's Mark again. Can I just advise that we do need 3 cabinet members present on any item to make a decision on that item, or we won't be core it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's fine. Okay, so moving on then to item 3, which is approval of minutes. They should have gone out electronically, so could I have a cabinet member please move the minutes?
Moved.
Happy to second.
Thank you both. Okay, and then item 4 is the update on Equalities work within the school. I can see that Lindsay is here. I don't know if you're going to present, or Nick Bunston's going to present this, because it is quite a short report, I think.
Thanks, Councillor Patel. For the benefit of the recording, I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm Corporate Director, Education and Family Support. I believe Nick is talking to the report.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Councillor Patel. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Nick Bunston. I'm the Consultation, Engagement and Equalities Manager for BCBC. So the report starts on page 13 of the report pack, and you'll see the purpose of the report is to provide Cabinet Committee Equalities with information on racial incidents that have been recorded in schools. These are monitored using the racial incident report form. So just to give a bit of background, on the 18th of March 2019, all schools were sent guidance on reporting racial incidents within schools. The guidance included when they should notify the local authority of racist incidents, as well as when they should involve the police where incidents are reported as a hate crime. Schools were provided at that point with updated racist incident forms, and this report outlines the incidents that have taken place so far during this academic year, so the 2021 academic year. Previous reports have been brought to Cabinet Committee in August 2020, and they were for the academic years 2018-19 and 2019-20. So moving on to section 4, for the current year, so for the current academic year, so far we've seen 10 racist incidents reported via the racist incident report form, and we've seen those in Brynchethin Primary, Porthcawl Comp, Bryntyrion Comp, Llangewydd Primary and Coleg Cymanfeg of Derwin. We've seen the incidents reported by verbal assaults or insults, racist comments in the course of a discussion, social media posts, refusal to cooperate with others because of religion, ethnicity or language, and we've seen one racist and homophobic comment in the course of a discussion. So last time we looked at age and gender of perpetrators and victims, and in this report I've gone on after a question being raised last time to have a look at the gender of the victim and perpetrator and whether there was kind of any correlation there. So in terms of age, you can see in the first graph at 4.1.2, we've got 3 incidents recorded at the age 9 mark and 3 incidents recorded at age 13, so they're the highest, followed by age 15, and then we've got 1 each at 10, 12 and 14. that's for the age of the perpetrator, sorry, age of victim. Then we go on to 3 when no direct victim was identified in the report, 3 at age 10, and then 1 each at 9, 12, 13 and 14. Then looking at the ethnicity, we've got 10 perpetrators were recorded as white British and 1 perpetrator was recorded as white and black African. And the ethnicity was recorded as Asian 3, black 1, other black African 1, and white and black Caribbean 2. 7 of the perpetrators were recorded as male and 4 female. 4 victims recorded as male and 3 recorded as female. And then we go on to look at the incidents by perpetrator to victim. So this was something that was asked for in the last report specifically. And it's quite interesting to see that there are no male, so no male perpetrator or male victim, no female perpetrator or a female victim, but we do have 4 female perpetrators with male victims, and then 3 male perpetrators with female victims. And then we've got 4 male perpetrators with no direct victim recorded. So on the incident report, and I think that was included last time, so you will have already seen that, there are several sections that the schools can tick in terms of what's happened as a result of the incident. So there's a range of interventions that can take place. So over this academic year, we've seen verbal reprimand used, letters home, fixed period exclusion, phone calls home, meeting with parents, formal school detention, removed from lessons or internal exclusion, referral to police, and prevent referral. So quite a range there of interventions that schools are using in order to deal with racist incidents. We did say that we would have a look at the Hate Crime in Schools project that was due to take place in this academic year. So at 4.2, you've just got one paragraph there detailing that unfortunately, because of the impact of COVID, that project has been delayed. And our education colleagues are currently in discussion with the WLGA and Welsh Government about the possibility of extending the available funding beyond the end of this financial year, so hopefully into the end of this academic year. And again, depending on what happens with schools, potentially beyond that, but those discussions are happening now. So we're hoping to get some response on that fairly soon. So moving on to the recommendation is that Cabinet Committee Equality receives and considers this report, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Nick. And I can see there's quite a bit of work that went into that, even though it's not as lengthy as the previous report. There's quite a lot of data in that. I will open it out for members to ask questions if you want to indicate by pressing the hands up icon. Just so members are aware that the figures are relatively small, and therefore if you could be mindful and discreet when asking questions, because we wouldn't want the perpetrator nor the victims to be identified through your questioning and Nick's answer. So if you could kind of be a bit mindful of that as well. I'll bring Councillor Smith in and then Councillor Janice Lewis.
Janice was first. If you want to ask her to go first, Chair.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I don't want to push in front.
Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. That's very nice of you. Just a bit of clarification, actually, Chair. I have a grandson that goes to Brynchettin School, campus, or whatever you want to call it. And I also have my daughter-in-law who is on the Board of Governors, and my husband is on the Board of Governors. So do I declare an interest there? Just a clarification, please. Mark?
Thanks, Councillor Lewis. I would declare a personal interest in that, I would, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. So there we are. I have a personal interest. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I don't know whether Nick can answer all of my question, or it might need to go to Lindsay as well. But I would start by saying what the chair just said, which is the numbers are small. I don't often refer back to my own teaching experience, as Lindsay knows, because it was so long ago. Now, I started teaching half a century ago, if you want to put it that way, and I finished school teaching a quarter of a century ago. So it was a different world, but I'm guessing that there was a lot more casual racism in the schoolyard and everywhere in the 70s. You know, even thinking back, things like children's nicknames just would not be, some of those would not be acceptable today. So we've made progress. But one thing I learned in those days is that everybody's capable of it. Everybody's capable of being a bully, and everybody's capable of doing something which is consciously or unconsciously racist. So when I was responsible for pupil behaviour as a head of year, I did despair when a teacher or a parent said, "Oh, he or she is a nice boy or a nice girl. He or she would never be a bully," because experience is that everybody is capable of it. There's no such thing as a nice girl or a nice boy who is incapable of being a bully. That is one thing I learned, and I think that's one thing that doesn't change over the ages. So my question is, do you always, you can't tell from the figures, and I understand why the figures are set out the way they are, because we don't want to have any possibility of identifying a person. But are parents informed as a matter of course? I can see that there are some letters to parents and some interviews with parents, but my personal opinion is that if there's an accusation of bullying or racism, even if the accusation isn't substantiated later, the parents ought to be informed. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of it is where parents do talk to the school, how are they reacting? Are they defending the child, or are they agreeing that the child has behaved inappropriately and are willing to do something about it? So whether it's Nick or Lindsay can answer that, I don't know.
I think Lindsay, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Smith. I would agree with Councillor Smith. I think there's great value in involving the parents in these discussions and taking ownership of these issues. So I know schools will always involve parents in these incidents. Obviously, as a statutory requirement to report instances like this to the local authority, it must be done on an annual basis. And for example, where there are exclusions, there would be naturally a conversation with parents, carers involved in that. With individual schools, obviously all individual schools would have an anti-bullying policy, so that would need to be enacted, and it's defined in law, so it's a very consistent approach.
Thank you, Lindsay. I hope you're happy with that or content with that answer.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it's just to keep on in relation to something that I've mentioned before, and I wonder whether, without identifying particular schools or victims or perpetrators, whether there's any way that we could anonymise the forms that have come forward so that we could actually visualise some of these complaints. And I think it's useful because, as I said in the past, I've talked about the use of language, and so many times walking through town I hear people saying, "Oh, that's so gay," without meaning queer, puff, or homosexual. They use it in a different term. And again, I've said in the past about the fact that people within certain cohorts use their own and have reclaimed words, and they use them. So some of my friends will call other gay men girl or queer, but it's not an offensive term. So I just want to make that point to make sure that when we're understanding equality and victims and perpetrators, that we understand it in the fuller picture. Councillor Charles Smith obviously mentioned around racism, and obviously I would just like to add around any sort of prejudice that it's used. And the definition of bully or bullying is something that is persistent and ongoing. So I just wonder how we record those sort of incidences. If one person says 3 or 4 times to an individual that they are gay, then is that recorded as one incident, or whether is it recorded as 3? And I would like some sort of differentiation between those that are one times or more, and whether that really does constitute bullying or not. I hope that makes sense to Nick, because that's probably who's going to end up having to answer that, or Lindsay.
I'm happy to come in, Chair.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Baldwin. I agree. And just the definition really of bullying is, as Councillor Baldwin has established, it's normally repetitive or persistent, and it's intentionally harmful. So again, the key thing with us is that all the work within schools, and indeed the work within local authorities and Central South Consortium, is governed by policy. It's very clearly laid out in legislation as set by Welsh Government. But also, and I'm quite happy to share this with committee members following the meeting, there are two key bits of guidance that were issued by Estyn and Welsh Government. First, Estyn in 2014, which establishes protocols around anti-bullying policies in schools, and also further guidance in 2018 by Welsh Government. And I think those will probably cover some of the really important issues that Councillor Baldwin raises. So through you, Chair, I'm more than happy to circulate those two bits of guidance to members.
Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful. Thank you, Lindsay. I see that Councillor Radcliffe has indicated they want to come in. Sorry, Nick, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just think it might be worth noting at this point as well that we have committed in our 2020 to 2024 strategic equality plan to review how we report incidents in schools to include all protected characteristics. I think that might cover off part of Councillor Baldwin's question as well.
Thanks. Councillor Radcliffe, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is just related to the future funding of the hate crime projects that's mentioned in the report. And if that funding isn't forthcoming, what plans does the authority have to do to carry forward that sort of work in a more general sense? And how would it fit in with a new curriculum? Because my understanding is the new curriculum allows flexibility for schools to do the sort of prevention of racism and pro-equality work within their current curriculum. So my question is really about how is this being taken forward in the future, with or without the funding for the hate crime project?
Okay, should I bring Lindsay back in on that one then, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Radcliffe. Absolutely, this work must be sustainable. Now, clearly, we're relying on funding with some of the excellent work that's been done with Children Racism, the Red Card and the Hate Crime Project. But I think it'd be helpful, Chair, if I just go through some of the key elements that we're already undertaking with schools that obviously complement the work of these two important initiatives. So first of all, I think it's fair to say that all of this work is a multi-agency approach, not least within the local authority, but also working with partners, for example, like the police. Members who sit on the Youth Justice Board will be aware of some of the excellent work the Bridgend Youth Justice Service do in respect to this matter and how they support schools. Members will also be aware that we have an education engagement team, and these work closely with schools to advise and guide in respect to the issues we're talking about this morning. And also with our early help teams, they work very closely, not just with schools, but with families as well, to support the correct behaviours. We also have a communication and relationships team, again, a multi-agency approach, and this team works very closely with learners who have specific behavioural and emotional needs. So again, there's a full wraparound support, be it through a team around the school or team around the family. So there's an embedded approach. There's a very integral working system in Bridgend at the moment that complements the initiatives at Welsh Government level, and these are sustained through current funding levels.
Fab. I hope that goes some way towards answering your query, Councillor Radcliffe. So the last person I've got here that's indicated that they'd like to come in is, sorry, the last but one person I've got here is Councillor Sorrel Dendy. If anybody else would like to come in, could you raise your hand now, so then I can bring you in. But thanks, Councillor Dendy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to thank officers putting this in. I believe I was one of the people who raised about looking about the gender of the victim and the perpetrator. I think Nicola was right in saying when she's given the report that it is interesting there are no male to male and female to female incidents included. And I was just wondering if there's anything that can be gained by that, or anything that could be looked at from those reported incidents. I understand it's only just a low percentage, but of figures overall, but whether that's something that could be included and looked at when we're going forward with doing any of this work in the schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dendy. First of all, thank you for raising this really important point, and absolutely, we're working very closely with Nick and the team on this. The key thing for me is racism and bullying have absolutely no place in society. So, you know, we're going to drive this down so that there is no incident. So the key thing for us is to make sure that these robust policies and procedures in place, we have preventative education and responsive education in needs across our school. But again, we're indebted to members for bringing these key issues and for giving us a forum to discuss these key matters going forward.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks, Councillor Dendy. Leader, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just going to ask if in future reports we could report on the take-up of the awareness raising and training that's been offered, because I know there's a very, very high take-up across our schools. So it's understanding the extent of that and whether we need to do more work in the future, and the format of that engagement with schools, particularly during the pandemic and the need for much of that to be virtual as well as face-to-face. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Leader. I think we're going to have a bit more of a fuller report on this next time, so I'm sure Nick can include those points in that report. Is that okay? Yes, Nick?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think when we look at the forward work programme, we were going to have a discussion about how frequently we want this report. And this report, of course, has happened in the middle of an academic year, so trying to time that so we get full academic years for each report, but we can have a discussion about that obviously later when we get to that agenda item.
Okay, thanks, Nick. And I don't see that there's any more members that would like to contribute to this discussion. I think just in summing up, I understand and I recognise that a lot of work has happened throughout schools, throughout the county, and I think for me, the numbers are small, which is a good thing, but also quite disappointing because, you know, reflecting on this academic year so far, schools haven't been open, and well, they haven't to an extent. And I think just to have even a handful of cases is still really disappointing. You know, I think a lot has happened, but in the middle of a pandemic, I'm just really saddened that racism still exists and it is something that's still occurring. And I think, you know, as Nick's mentioned, I think we will be talking about the frequency of this report, and I wouldn't like to see this issue dropped off the agenda, or, you know, I'd like to see it come back frequently. I think I'm encouraged by the debate and discussion that we've had today that other members are also interested. So yes, I just wanted to point that out. But if I could have a cabinet member move and second that the recommendations at point 9, please.
Move.
Thank you.
Happy to second, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. I'll move on now to item 5, which is the use of the name Picton Street in names and buildings throughout Bridgend County. And this is an update report. So if I could bring Nick in, please, to present the report.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
Councillor Nicole Burnett declared a prejudicial interest in this item. Is that right?
I will leave the meeting now if you can invite me back in.
Yeah, please. I will do, yeah. Thanks, Councillor.
You.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So, as Councillor Patel has already said, this is an update report on the use of the name Picton in street names and buildings throughout Bridgend County Borough. So we've already brought some reports to previous meetings on this agenda item. So this is now an update as a result of the research that's been carried out by the Glamorgan Archives. So just going straight down to 4.2 in the report, the Glamorgan Archives was commissioned to carry out research on behalf of the council, and it was agreed that the Glamorgan Archives would carry out a total of up to 100 hours research on our behalf. However, due to the restrictions imposed due to COVID-19, they've had some difficulties in accessing their offices and therefore accessing physical archives. So a total of 50 hours and 35 minutes of research has been completed to date. They have produced a report that's attached to this as Appendix 1, and that report concludes that searches of the relevant local authority minute books and planning records reveal details of the development of streets, but no references to the naming of these streets. It was and continues to be commonplace for streets to be named after local families and landowners. Members of the Picton Turberville family also held positions of authority within the area. For example, Colonel J. Picton Turberville was serving on Penybont Rural District Council. Picton Street and Picton Place in Nantyffyllon appear to have been built on the Turberville estate land, and that's detailed in the report, as you can see. And Picton Gardens and Picton Close, Bridgend, are built on the site of Picton Court, but there is no direct link with the Picton or Picton Turberville family has been able to be established. So the report is quite lengthy when you go on to have a look at the appendices, but they are the kind of summary points as a result of the report. So if we move on to the recommendation, I think at this stage we suggest that Cabinet Committee receive the update report and the report from the Glamorgan Archives. However, it's recommended that we now await next steps from the Welsh Government audit before further consideration can be given to any actions that we may need to take as a county borough. At the moment, we haven't had anything further from the Welsh Government audit since the report that we received just before the last Cabinet Committee. So we don't know what their next steps are at this stage. But the Glamorgan Archives don't feel that carrying out further research at this stage will really add any value to what we have so far. So it may be worth waiting for those next steps in order for us to make kind of future decisions. And then further into the report, we've got Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, which gives us the full report and then some evidence of maps and evidence of land ownership, which obviously gives us much more detail.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I just wanted to again ask members if they would like to contribute or have comments or queries. If you would like to indicate by pressing the raised hand button, I'll bring you in. And so Councillor Richard Young, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think the report actually shows how difficult it is to pinpoint the reasons behind why these streets are named the way that they are. It's obvious that some of these are going to be attached to the Picton Turberville name, but others, like what are contained just off Printing Avenue, which is the old Bridgend Urban District Council, don't seem to have any context within the Picton Turberville area, as it were. So I'm happy to move the report if you'd like me to do that, Chair.
That'd be helpful.
But I'd like to thank everybody that's been involved in this, because it's a monumental task. It sounds very, very easy, but it's a monumental task. And I think if you look at the appendices, Chair, you can see the sort of detail that they've been trawling through, and it does take an enormous amount of time. I personally found the appendices really, really interesting. The maps and the detail that they go into, especially around the tithe reports. But I'm happy to move the recommendation. I don't think that we are going to be in a position to prove anything more than what is contained in this report, and I think it's acceptable now to wait for the Welsh Government to decide what they're going to do in this matter, because I'm sure they'll be getting similar reports from other local authorities, Chair. So happy to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, I think it's been a very useful exercise to look into the history of General Picton and to have a think about the way that we remember these people from history. I think we've learned a lot from it. I think we've still got something to learn, but I think we've learned a lot from it. Quite recently, within the last 10 years, when I was a teacher trainer, going to visit PGCE students doing their teaching practice, I used to look forward to trips down to West Wales, where one of the comprehensive schools was named after General Picton. That school has since been merged with another, and that name has been lost. I'm not quite sure what the timeline is, and whether that was a deliberate loss or just a happy accidental loss, but it's been lost anyway. But what I want to bring up is look into the future and the way that we name streets, and I wonder whether the council needs to have some sort of policy in to prevent naming streets after persons, or if we do name them after persons, let's broaden the picture a bit and do what they do in Spain and France and name the streets after poets, artists, film directors, scientists, doctors, or all sorts of people, not just generals and aristocracy. I got a question which I don't know whether anybody here can answer, but the question is, to what extent are we involving community and town councils in street namings these days? I know there was a time when Lalliston Community Council, I'm talking about going back to the 1980s, 1990s, we were regularly asked about street names, especially when Broadlands was built. And we actually implemented an all-Welsh policy down in Broadlands. Lalliston Community Council's policy was all street names in Broadlands ought to be Welsh. Okay, they could be English second, but they'd be Welsh first. And that was an LCC policy, not an Ogwer Borough Council or Mid Glamorgan or whatever it was in those days policy. I do remember Bracla Community Council quarrelling with the property developer because they wanted to name something Buttercup Close or something like that, and they called it Mandela Avenue, and that was controversial at the time. At the time, the Prime Minister was calling Mr. Mandela a terrorist, and the Foreign Secretary, I think he sort of denied it since, but he did recommend that Mr. Mandela ought to be hanged. But nowadays, I think anybody would be absolutely happy to live in Mandela Avenue. So things change, and we need to be very careful about the way we name streets. I'm not expecting a street to be named Smith Street in the near future. There is one in London, and I claim that one. It's Square, and the Labour Party headquarters is there, so it's very, very appropriate, actually. But we need. I think maybe we need to look at street names. My number one principle would be that developers are not allowed to name streets or areas. There's controversial enough housing development up the road from me, which the developers are calling Morgan's Meadow. None of us have got a clue who this Morgan is. Might turn out to be General Picton's Batman for all we know, but we're resisting the pressure to call it Morgan's Meadow, and I don't know where the name came that they've got up there on the street boards came from. I know it didn't come from the community council because we weren't asked. So that basically, I know I'm going around the houses a bit. But my recommendation is that we get back to the habit of discussing street names with local town and community councils. That's what I'd like to recommend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I think Councillor Young wants to come in on the back of what you've said.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Community councils are actually consulted on street names. I know, for instance, because I sit on County Higher Community Council, that they are regularly consulted on street names, but I think what you'll find is that how often you are consulted on street names will have a direct relationship with what's being built within your area. And as you can imagine, County Community Council has recently had Park Erwin built in its area, so there's a lot of consultation going on. So they are consulted. and I can tell Councillor Smith that once there seems to be agreement with regard to the consultation with town and community councils and this authority, the delegation power comes to me, and I actually sign it off. So there is consultation.
So I've got a chance of a Smith Street then, because you're my friend.
Sorry.
I've got a chance of a Smith Street because you're my friend.
Yes, I'm also considering Barry John Street and Cardassian Close, but there we are. Who knows? Who knows?
As long as we can have a Kylie Minogue Street in my stay, I'll be happy.
Yeah. So just to say that there is consultation, and I think in this day and age, to a large part, there is consensus on what the street is named, because I feel that some of the street names, for instance, that have been submitted to Coity Higher have not been acceptable, and they've actually been changed by the at the request of the community council, providing, of course, you're putting a logical name forward as an alternative. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Young.
Thank you, Richard.
I can see that Lead would like to come in, and so would Councillor Gebby. If there's anybody else that would like to join the discussion, then please let us know by indicating. But yep, Leader, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just wanted a second the recommendation that's been moved by Councillor Young, that we note the outcome of the work of the Archives Committee, very helpful work, and we await the outcome of the Welsh Government's work on this and their audit. So I second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Gebby, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I am interested to, I will be interested to read Welsh Government's audit, because I think that's going to have an all Wales impact. But my question was around engagement in schools and Black history, because I think if we can engage more in our schools with Black history, then potentially we're going to have a better influence in how we name, how we look at engaging in our community as well going forward. So I am interested in that, but also I'm interested to know if as a council we actually have a race policy, because I appreciate we have a dignity at work policy, but that's not quite the same thing, and it has a different impact. And if we had a race equality across the borough, it's something that could be adopted by third sector as well, and it's about engagement in our communities yet again. Thank you.
Okay, great. Can I bring Lindsay in, please, on the schools bit?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Geddy. I think that's an excellent suggestion. So I'd be more than happy taking that up with the Crossfays Heads Teacher meeting and also with Welsh Government. I'm the Association of Directors of Education in Wales link with Welsh Government in respect of school improvement. So I'd certainly be keen to bring that up in my monthly meetings with them, and also see how we can make a meaningful impact on local curriculum as well. So thank you, Councillor Gebby, and I'm happy to provide feedback following those meetings.
Okay, great. And then we've got this coming up on the agenda again in the forward work programme. So if you could then, Lindsay, feed back wherever you've got to, I think that'd be really helpful. And then on the race policy, Nick Bunston, please.
In relation to the race policy, obviously we've got our strategic equality plan, which covers all protected characteristics. But I think it's relevant that we have signed up to the zero tolerance, the policy to eradicate racial discrimination across Wales. So we have signed up to that as the local authority, and so have our youth council. So I think that's a really good step in terms of showing our commitment to ensuring that we are tackling racism as a local authority. But the actual policy sits within our strategic equality plan.
Councillor Gebby, would you like to come back? I can see you squinting.
Yeah, not because I'm unhappy with Nick's answer. However, I do think it's something that we need to consider, and possibly that's a discussion that you need to have with HR. And just a note for the education stuff. Charlotte Williams is actually doing a piece of work on Black history stuff in relation to the curriculum. So it might be worth Lindsay getting in touch with her. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gebby. And yeah, Nick and I will take away the policy bit and have a look at what we can do. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded, and I do not have any other speakers. So I presume everyone's happy with that. If you, yep, I'll take silence as well as happy. So yep, okay, great. So I don't think anyone's said anything against that. So if we move on then to item 6, which is the Strategic Equality Annual Report. And it is 2019-20, so it's not the current, well, the financial year that just finished or finishes this month. It's the year after, the year before that. So pre-pandemic is basically what we're looking at.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. It is a bit strange that we're reporting on 2019-20, but this annual report is up to the end of March 2020. As you know, we do have a new strategic equality plan for 2020 to 2024, so we'll do the first annual report on that this time next year. So this is the final annual report for the last strategic equality plan. So the purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the work completed within the Strategic Equality Plan 2016-20 for the period 2019 to 2020. So as some background, going into section 3, the Strategic Equality Plan annual report enables the Council to monitor and review progress against its strategic equality objectives, review its objectives and processes in light of any new legislation and any new developments, engage with relevant stakeholders around equality objectives, providing transparency, and include relevant training updates on equality impact assessments, procurement arrangements and training. So the progress, onto 3.2, the progress made to the Council on each of its 7 equality objectives is included in the report, which may be of interest to elected members, members of the community and community groups, Equality and Human Rights Commission and Welsh Government. And as we know, each year the Equality and Human Rights Commission do their monitoring work and do check our strategic equality plans as well as our strategic equality plan going forward. So for the 2016 to 2020 period, our strategic objectives were around transportation, fostering good relations and awareness raising, our role as an employer, mental health, children, leisure, arts and culture, and data. So down to 4.3, some of the key points to note from this annual report are during 1920, regular hate crime awareness sessions took place across the county borough. We had 82 sessions in which we engaged with 1,881 people. We've continued to mark, support and raise awareness of national equalities and diversity campaigns via social media and our website, and some of the things that we've focused on are Foster Care Fortnight, International Women's Day, Wartime Bridgend, Armed Forces Day, Welsh Language Rights Day, Pride Cymru, Hate Crime Awareness Week, the White Ribbon Campaign, and LGBTQ+ Adoption and Fostering Week. And they're just some of the things that we've promoted over the year. BCBC marked Holocaust Memorial Day in 2020 with a public event in the Sony Theatre in Bridgend College, where the theme was Stand Together. In that year, we delivered 26 frontline employees attended the Stonewall training that was delivered. To date, 141 members of staff have attended that training. We've provided a range of resources to employees via the Employee Assistance Programme and delivered by Care First, and they have been widely promoted throughout the authority. The The Bridgend Carers Wellbeing Service continues to develop in the County Borough, and the service continues to support carers through preemptive work being delivered through partnership working. BCBC and BARVO are active in the regional social prescribing network across the Cwm-Taf-Morgannwg region, and Show Racism the Red Card have delivered workshops in our schools delivering the anti-bullying and anti-racism message. Sessions have also included critical thinking, conflict resolution and unconscious bias. Halo Leisure have worked with parents and carers of children and young people with autism and have developed an autism-friendly swimming programme, and an Age and Well calendar has been created featuring wellbeing advice, partnerships and services, and over 4,000 copies have been distributed of that Age and Well calendar. There is an appendix attached to this report, which is the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report for 2019-20. And in that you can see additional information around consultation and engagement, our workforce information, information on gender and pay grade, job applications, staff training, and details of employees who have left the council. So the appendix does contain a lot more information, and we do have colleagues from HR that have joined the meeting if anyone has got any questions on any of the HR detail. So the recommendation is that Cabinet Committee Equality notes the progress being made and approves the Strategic Equality Plan for 2019 to 2020. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Nick. Could members please again indicate by pressing the raise hand button if you'd like to come in on this item. I can see Councillor Nicole Burdett has raised her hand, so if you'd like to come in, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nick, for that, and the team. It did make really interesting reading, actually, and I'm really looking forward to how we sort of move on with it in the future, particularly around rights of children, which I know that myself and the Chair are particularly keen on, and how we sort of adapt to the new socio-economic duty that we need to bring in. But I had a question really, and it's a HR question, and looking at the sort of demographics of our own workforce, we are benefiting greatly from experienced staff who have been with us for a long time, and I know from talking to a lot of the staff within my own portfolio, a lot of them are in the older age bracket. You know, we benefit enormously from them working with us. But I am a little concerned as to what position we're going to be in when they decide to retire, which I hope they don't soon, but and what we're doing about sort of succession planning and really sort of getting all the benefit out of that experience and allowing them the opportunity to pass their experience down to new members of staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. I see Deb wants to come in and answer some of the questions. So Deb, please.
Hi, I'm Debbie, Group Manager, HR and OD. You're absolutely right, Councillor Burnett, and thank you, Chair, for inviting me to speak. You know, we do monitor the age profile of the authority, as you'll see in this report, and members of CMB also receive more detailed information. Workforce planning is very important, succession planning, and a cornerstone of that is us understanding the workforce that we've got at the moment. But age is clearly one whereby it does raise those questions, and it's therefore really important that we make sure that we are giving people lots of opportunities to develop their skills, to learn from those experienced staff who are within the organisation, to ensure that that learning is shared whilst people are in. I don't think there's one size fits all. I think it varies across teams and services how this is managed. As I say, learning and development is very important, but also some of our grow your own schemes, whereby we can support individuals within the workplace on professional development programmes to enable them to gain qualifications whilst earning and I'm talking about apprenticeships. In the future, we'd be looking at graduate programmes, but also within your portfolio, Councillor Burnett, looking at social work secondment schemes, for example. So I think all those things are really, really important, and we need to continue to have lots of conversations with our management teams, because there will be particular hotspots in different areas across the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb, and thanks, Councillor Burnett. Some valid points and questions raised there. Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Chair, and totally support everything that Councillor Burnett says around, and that Deborah has mentioned in relation to growing our own and making sure that we promote and give those opportunities. It might not be the correct terminology, but around knowledge transfer and sort of experience transfer. Sorry, my dog is growling in the back, the postman's going past. I wonder how we could facilitate some sort of learning from the more experienced staff, and experience doesn't necessarily always mean age. I need to make sure we emphasize that. But if we've got people that are looking as part of the succession planning of being able to move on and leave or retire within a certain period of time, what could we do to facilitate how people learn from them without physically being with those individuals? So understanding if there were any sort of pitfalls, peaks, troughs, any barriers that they had to overcome, and even if they were in sort of podcast type presentations that people could watch that are aspiring to be senior social workers, structural engineers, those sorts of things, so they can understand what their next steps are going to be without it being in a too constructed type of form. So it's that natural transfer of knowledge that we used to call it learning from Nelly, didn't we, a long time ago? I don't know if Nelly's acceptable anymore, but with that sort of understanding that people could watch it, or I've even argued in the past that it could, when you're back in the office, if these sort of experiences could be playing on monitors and TV screens within the area that people are working in, so they get to understand what those opportunities are. Thank you.
Yeah, the informal learning, I think, is what you're alluding to. Deb, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think learning in all shapes and forms, isn't it? Whether it's in informal ways, in structured ways, but working within a team. And I think lots of our structures across the organisation lend themselves to that. People should be having one-to-ones with managers, so that's an opportunity, as well as their appraisal, to have discussions about their own aspirations and development opportunities. And there can be very informal arrangements as well. One of my newly appointed direct reports is on this call with me today, so that she can have the experience of seeing how a committee runs, but also how the work that she's provided is used in this format. So I think there are lots of different opportunities. We're currently undertaking a training needs analysis, which will inform corporate training, so that's important, and we know that discussions are happening around that across management teams. Some of the things that we've been investing in particular in the last I'd say probably 18 months and looking forward, is how we support managers. Yes, there's formal training for them to achieve qualifications, but we've been looking at something that we would perhaps badge as a management cafe, to give people opportunity to dip into certain topics that they might find interesting. And perhaps our senior managers are the people who are best placed to deliver some of those programmes. I think the experiences that we've had in the last year, in particular of online, we certainly weren't geared up this time last year to deliver any online training at all. And yet I believe that the list of online training that's now available is quite impressive. We see managers, the attendance levels have improved at training events. And so I think the online place gives us lots of different opportunities to deliver training, so people can access it in different ways that may fit better with their working responsibilities. So lots of ideas, and yes, Councillor Baldwin, this is a really, really important points you've made there. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. I don't have anyone else that's come in wanting to speak on this item. I'll give it a couple of seconds if anybody else wants to come in. Go on then, Councillor Smith. No, you've just put your camera on.
Just getting ready to vote, that's all.
Okay, would you like to move the recommendations?
I'd be delighted to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much. And can I have a cabinet member second that, please?
I'd like to second, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. And if I'll take dissent, so if anybody doesn't agree with that, please could you let me know? No, okay, so that's been agreed there then. Thanks, Deb, for producing and presenting the report there. I'll move on now to item 7, which is the report on implementation of the Welsh Language Measures 2011 and the Welsh Language Standards. I think this is a report, I think probably for noting, unless Nick wants to add anything, it's something that the committee have asked for, just so you're aware that we've had no new complaints about our use of Welsh language, and there are no outstanding complaints. So it's a very short report because there is nothing really to report on. I don't know if Nick, you want to add anything?
No, I think it's just a report. I know we talked about this report and how often we bring this report a couple of Cabinet Committee meetings ago, and it was felt that it was important that we continue to keep this on the agenda. Thankfully, since the last report, we've had no new complaints, and obviously all the previous complaints have been dealt with. So as you say, a very short report, but if we keep this on there just in case anything does come up in the future. But the recommendation for this is that Cabinet Committee receives and considers this very brief report.
Thank you. I think it's great that we've had nothing, no new complaints, and that everything that we've reported on previously to the committee has been closed now, and there's no outstanding actions for us to do as a local authority. So can I have a cabinet member please move the recommendations?
Move.
Thank you. And someone to second?
Second.
Thank you. And does anybody disagree with that? No, so on that basis, it's been moved and seconded and accepted. So I'll move on now to item 8, which is the Forward Work Programme. And this is obviously the opportunity for members here to agenda items which they think would be interesting for this committee to see. I know that people have contributed in the past, and we've generated things such as mental health and carers, and so if you could all have a look at that item there, I think it's on page 85 of the report pack. And if you could let me know if there's anything else you'd like to add to it. This is an evolving document, so if anything does come up between now and the date, the next meeting that's pressing, we can obviously add it in as well. But it's just so you've got an oversight of what we're looking at. I can see Councillor Burnett has come in. Would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did notice on the forward work plan for March, I think it was in 2022, the socio-economic duty a year on, but I wasn't sure what we were doing before then. I did have a look, I couldn't see anything before then. I think this is something which is going to become increasingly important. I know we've been on training for it, but I think it would be nice to bring to this committee more of a report or an explanation of what it is and how it's going to impact us as a council, but also further training for elected members on what our socio-economic duty is going to be. So I don't know if that's possible, because I think it's something that's going to impact us as councillors probably more than a lot of the other equality issues, really, because social deprivation is a huge factor within BCBC. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Burnett. Nick, did you want to reply?
Yeah, do you want me to just quickly run through the report and then go on to the forward work programme? But I definitely think we can add something in maybe in the July meeting around socioeconomic duty and the work that we're doing. Yeah. If people would be happy with that. So just to kind of go through the report very quickly, this is to present Cabinet Committee with a draft of the forward work programme for 2021 to 2022. And Appendix 1 sets out the regular business items as well as key equality issues that we might want to consider kind of each month. And I know that myself and the chair have already had a discussion kind of around the work that we've already brought to committee, and think it might be useful going forward if in this report we remind ourselves of that, of maybe what we've delivered over the past 3 years. So that we can see we're getting a good range of work that's coming before the committee. And, you know, maybe after 3 years we need to refresh that. But I think it would be useful to see what we've done as well as what we're going to go on to do in the next 12 months. So that's something I can do for this next forward work programme as we kind of move forward. But moving down to the appendix, we've got the usual business items on the right. So we're now on page 85. Taking on board, Councillor Burnett, what you've said, there's a lot of work going on in the background at the moment on the socio-economic duty. Welsh Government providing a lot of information, and work's going on with the WLGA in relation to getting training and stuff out and available to people. We are currently reviewing our, we're in the process of kind of finishing off the review of our equality impact assessment, so that we include impact of socio-economic duty within the equality impact assessment, and some e-learning to accompany that, and new guidance to accompany the equality impact assessment. I have already done a briefing to one directorate on the socio-economic duty and how that's going to impact on them. So happy to kind of continue that through different groups across the authority. But as you know, it's due to come in on the 31st of October, so we really haven't got long before it's going to kind of hit us. So it's really important that we get all that work done and ready for the end of this month. So I think we could probably add that into to a main item in July to say, you know, what we're doing in terms of the socio-economic duty, how that's changed some of the processes that we have, how it's changed our paperwork, because that, you know, that is relevant, and where we are recording decisions and how we should be recording decisions where we've considered the impact of the socio-economic duty. So if members are happy, I can certainly add that into July 2021.
Yeah, I think Councillor Burnett raises a valid point. Not everybody's up to speed with the socio-economic duty, and so it would be important then for us to recognise that in the meeting, and then obviously the one then the following year, which is a review of the year so far. I think it's important if we also continue to have that there as well. Are there any other members that would like to suggest anything they'd like to see on the forward work programme? Yep, Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Chair. And it may come up as part of normal business, but I'd probably like to see some sort of, it's just a business item rather than the main topic, but an understanding or an update in relation to the uptake of equalities training, whether that be online. Well, it's probably going to be more online at this moment in time, but just for us to understand that the way that our staff are taking the importance of equalities training and refreshing of it as well, please.
Yep, I think we can slot that into the annual workforce report and then cover that off. But Nick, if you want to confirm or correct.
Yeah, I was going to say it could probably go into two places. It could probably either go into the Strategic Equality Plan annual report or the workforce report, depending on whether Deb and HR colleagues feel that's appropriate in the workforce report. But certainly in one of those, we can make sure that's highlighted.
Great. Oh, Deb, yes. No, sorry. When you put the camera on, I just presume everyone wants to speak. Okay, I don't see anybody else that's indicated that they want to come in. But if you do think of an item that you think that the Cabinet Equalities Committee would be interested, or it would be good for us to review, then you're welcome to email me or contact Nick, and we can then see about that. I can see that the deputy leader and the leader have both indicated that they'd like to come in. So if I could bring them in turn, please. Do you want to come in, Dep?
Thanks, Chair. And first of all, can I apologise for being very late? But on this item, I just want to refer back to the corporate plan that was approved at Council recently, and in that in the covering report, there's a bullet point there that says that public service boards are required to undertake an assessment of well-being 12 months prior to local elections, and so I'm just wondering, where would that report to? Would that be something that will come to this this committee, do we think?
I don't think it would come to this committee. I think it probably go to either the main cabinet meeting or council, but I'll find out. But I don't think it does come here. Leader, please.
Thanks, Chair. The WLGA, Welsh Local Government Association, met on Friday and discussed diversity and democracy, and there was unanimous support from all groups, all members, for the recommendations of that working group that was set up to identify the barriers to having council chambers that are more representative of the communities that they serve. Now, that may be a report that is best considered and discussed by the Democratic Services Committee, or by this committee, or by both committees, but it will need to be discussed by a committee of this authority, because it is a very important report, and I'm sure it is a report that all members of this authority will be supportive of, because we all want to see a more representative authority, and that's the case across Wales. And then secondly, Chair, and I think that this has been referred to, and it will be picked up implicitly in all sorts of reports, but we may want to think about specific reports on the impact of the pandemic on entrenched inequalities, because there is a fear that some of those inequalities will be amplified by the pandemic. And if that is the case, because there will be the immediate, the short, the medium, and the long term, if it is the case that those inequalities have been amplified and will be amplified, then we will want to consider how we respond to those those additional pressures on our communities. So two potential items. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. I think they're both really interesting items. I know I've seen the WLGA Diversity and Democracy report, and it is a really interesting read, and the recommendations are something I think that we should be reviewing with elected members. So we'll take that away and see where best is to discuss that. You know, it could be this committee as well as the Democratic Services Committee. Nick, I can see that you've put your hand up. Did you want to come in on this?
Sorry, my hand was up about another main item and whether that needed to move to a business item. So I can pick that up.
Yeah, no, do you want to do that now?
Okay. It was the Equalities work in schools. I know we talked about bringing that back again. So it was the full academic year. It's just whether that is something that we want to look at annually, and if so, do we move that to a business item, agenda item, rather than a main item? So for that discussion, really.
Okay, so how do members feel about that then? Would you like that to come back annually, or would you like that to come back more often? Is there?
No, I suppose it's whether it's just a one-off report, or do we move it across so it becomes an annual report?
I think based on the level of interest, I would prefer it to come back frequently. I know that we've had it a couple of times and there's still some ongoing work on that. So I think having it as actually a main item for as and when it's needed is important. And then obviously annually, if there isn't anything that we've discussed throughout the year, I think that would be my preference, because I wouldn't want it to be annually and then for us to wait for the full year then in order for us to pick up things that we've been discussing. So for example, the schools piece that we've discussed now, this ongoing conversations, and it's going to come back, I think, in November. But I wouldn't want us to wait until March for that work to come back, if that makes sense. So I think maybe biannually.
Well, I was going to say, if I bring it to November 2021, then that will allow us to have a look at the full academic year of 2020-2021. But if we're going to look at it per academic year, I could then bring it each November. So we can do the full year rather than do 2 half-year worth of figures. But if there was anything urgent, obviously we could bring that as an interim report.
Okay, so that would be good. I think having it at the end of every academic year would be useful. And then obviously if there's anything else that comes up in the interim that we need to discuss or we think would be useful for us to see, then that can come in addition to the annual report. Are members okay with that? Or does anyone else have any views?
I support that, Chair.
Thanks, Leader. Okay, with that then, I guess I've written down quite a few notes, but would someone like to move the recommendations?
Move.
Thank you. And second?
Second the recommendations with the amendments that we've discussed, Chair.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you very much. I think the last item now on the agenda is urgent items, and I've not been informed of anything. I don't know if Nick, you've been informed of anything.
Nope, nothing.
Nope. Okay, so I'd just like to thank the officers for producing the reports, and to Mike for helping ensure that this was a smooth running committee. But yeah, without anything further to do, I shall call the meeting to a close. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.